Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Kalila Reynolds. It's not a takeover. That's the word from Chairman of Mayberry Investments, Christopher Berry. The chairman was responding to claims that Mayberry Investments and Zodiac International Holdings Limited had teamed up to drastically restructure the board of Supreme Ventures Limited in a hostile takeover. But it appears they've reached a compromise, at least for now. Last week, Mayberry requested an extraordinary general meeting of Supreme Ventures shareholders to replace 7 of the 10 members of the board, including board chairman Paul Hu. However, Berry today announced that only 3 of the suggested directors were added to the SVL board this morning. He says the company is still taking legal advice on whether to move forward with the extraordinary general meeting to install the other 4. Andrew Laidley reports.
The SVL board cannot have more than 12 directors, and according to Mayberry's chairman Christopher Berry, the SVL board wasn't filled to capacity. He says the board had 11 directors. 2 of those directors resigned, leaving a vacancy for 3 directors. He says those spots are now filled by 3 of the directors Mayberry suggested.
You may not all be aware, but since this morning, Supreme Ventures added 3 directors, myself, Gary Peart, and Ansel Howell. So we are currently having discussions and things are changing. And as things change, that EGM request will be under review. So I don't really wish to say anything else about that right now, if you don't mind.
So has Mayberry Investments been appeased? According to CEO Gary Peart, the company may be willing to cancel its initial request for 7 new members upon advice from its lawyers.
We had indeed sent in our EGM request seeking to appoint 7 new directors and remove 7. As my chairman spoke earlier, that we're taking that under advisement, and we will determine in very short order whether that letter stays in effect or we will rescind the request for EGM. But you'll be advised in short order on that.
Nevertheless, Chairman Christopher Berry stressed that Mayberry had no intention to take over Supreme Ventures in the first place.
People are saying it's a takeover, and there's no takeover. That's far from the reality. If you know the company well, you know that a holding company, of which a majority shareholder was Intralot from Greece, was controlling that company. And all that really happened is that the Mute family bought their shares and borrowed some money to buy the shares and also sold some of the shares to pay down the debt. So that same holding company actually holds less shares today.
Mr. Berry is assuring stakeholders that he does not agree with the practice of using voting power to determine change in any organization.
So normally when we are on our board, if there's a disagreement, we will I can remember twice in my entire life when we would use our voting power to push something through on the board. We believe in consensus. We want everybody to realize what is good for the company before the company proceeds down that path. Because what we have found is that when you have buy-in, it happens a lot faster.
BATV News contacted Supreme Ventures for a response today. However, Assistant Vice President of Group Corporate Communications, Simone Clark Cooper, says they will not be commenting at this time. For BATV News, I'm Andrew Laidley.
Meanwhile, Mayberry Investments announced on the weekend that it's acting as lead broker and arranger to Zodiac International Investments and Holdings Limited. This as Zodiac closes its $6.6 billion financing to acquire all ordinary shares in Zodiac Caribbean Ventures Limited, formerly Intralot Caribbean Ventures Limited. The acquisition raises Zodiac's holdings in Supreme Ventures to 49.9%. It's this same deal that has resulted in Zodiac teaming up with Mayberry to change several of the Supreme Ventures directors in what's been described as a hostile takeover. Zodiac is a private company based in Trinidad and Tobago. Intralot is a Greek technology firm. Mayberry says they're proud that Jamaican and Caribbean investors were able to reacquire shares of a major Jamaican company from an international investor. The Factories Corporation of Jamaica, FCJ, says it plans to establish some 1.5 million square feet of office space. This will add to the 1.7 million square feet already in operation and provide more than 30,000 new jobs. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Dr. Horace Chang, says the corporation is on a trajectory to dramatically increase the amount of commercial and industrial space available. He was speaking on Saturday at the FCJ's 30th Anniversary Awards banquet at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel. The FCJ is the single largest provider of factory space and infrastructure in Jamaica. It's embarked on a thrust to create more space to accommodate the mushrooming business process outsourcing BPO sector. And when we come back, cannabis controversy. The Ganja Growers and Producers Association is accusing the chief medical officer of corruption in the industry. More after the break. Welcome back. The Ganja Growers and Producers Association of Jamaica, GGPAJ, is accusing the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Winston Delahaye, of corruption. They're calling for an investigation into his private company, Neuropsych Services. They say the company has been registered to train and certify selected doctors to prescribe or recommend medical cannabis. But Dr. Delahaye says his private company has nothing to do with the Ministry of Health. Anthony Morgan reports.
President of the GGPAJ, Orville Silvera, says the association is awaiting answers from the Ministry of Health over what it says may be corruption in a private company employed by the Chief Medical Officer and registered to certify medical practitioners to prescribe medical ganja. He says the company has already done 2 training sessions.
What we thought was a Ministry of Health training program seems to be a training program that was put together by the CMO of the Ministry of Health. This same CMO have established a company, and you can check with the company office to verify. The name of the company is Neuropsych Services Limited. It was articled with 3 names on it. 2 of the name, all 3 names from the same address in St. Andrew, private address, and all 3 names, 2 of the names and name is with Delahaye.
Dr. Delahaye confirmed to BATV News today that Neuropsych Services is indeed his private practice. According to the company's Office of Jamaica website, it was registered just 2 months ago in August. Mr. Silvera says the GGPAJ has not been consulted or informed of the situation. They're also questioning the tender process and the $400 that participants had to pay for their training, even though there was sponsorship for the program.
Where is this money going? Is this money going to the Ministry of Health, through the CLA, or where is this money going? Why did this company, Neuropsych Services, get the management job for this training program? Was an expression of interest sent out as per government contract regulation for the management post to be filled? These are questions we need to get answers for.
Silvera says if the Ministry of Health fails to respond, then the association will take further action.
Yes, we are going to take it further. We are going to ask the Contractor General to look at this issue. We are going to ask the NIA to look at this issue. We are asking civil society to take a look at this issue.
For BATV News, I'm Anthony Morgan.
Meanwhile, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Winston Delahaye told BATV News this evening that Neuropsych Services has been his private practice for the last 15 years. He says the company is not associated with the Ministry of Health.
So here's the reality, which is what they don't know. One, there's absolutely no association with the activity in the Ministry of Health. Two, in addition to being a Chief Medical Officer, I'm a consultant psychiatrist with permission to have a private practice, which I've had as Neuropsych Services Limited for the last 15 years. As an addiction psychiatrist, I've put on numerous workshops for a fee, not for a fee, in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of West Indies, where the work I do is aimed at addiction and also otherwise, like this activity.
He says the company has recognized the challenges being faced by physicians wanting training for medical cannabis.
There's no requirement for any physician to participate in this. However, having been involved in psychiatry and specifically cannabis for all of my professional career, and needing myself to have gone to get training in the use of medicinal cannabis, which I do recognize as one of the challenges with members of this particular group. They have difficulty understanding that there are persons who can see both sides, as I do. But be that as it may, the point is we, as Neuropsych Services, recognize the challenges physicians may face. There is absolutely no requirement by the Ministry of Health for anyone to get training. Any physician in this country can write any prescription they wish, provided they feel comfortable.
In other ganja news, the ganja growers and commercial stakeholders are set to establish the Cannabis Commercial Council by the end of the month. Here's more.
Ganja stakeholders says they're concerned about the future development of the local cannabis industry. But the Cannabis Commercial Council is intended to help. GGPHA President Orville Silvera says the council will be a research arm which will push the development of the industry. The council will be launched this Sunday after the 4th Ganja Stakeholders Forum.
We have the Cannabis Commercial, which is our research arm. In actual fact, it's a parent of the Ganja Future Girls, now Ganja Girls. We are launching the full program now to show to Jamaica that this is where we are going.
He says the council will ensure that economic interests of the traditional and small ganja cultivators are protected and secured. They also plan to develop a code of ethics and standards for the industry.
We are interested in the scientific development of this industry. We are interested in bringing to this space best practices in all space, whether it's in farming, processing, or whatever.
Mr. Silvera says the council will be diverse.
A wide cross-section of scientists and academia, in addition to girls and processors.
For BATV News, I'm Norda Francis Williams.
And when we come back, find out which Caribbean country is getting into the aluminum industry. Regional and international news is up next. Welcome back. It's time now for regional and international news. The Trinidad and Tobago government has injected $35 million into the production of an aluminum plant with Venezuelan-based company Sural. They're hoping to establish an aluminum industry to produce aluminum mag wheels. More in this report.
It's the belief of the government that the country can benefit from an aluminum plant which will aid in the establishment of jobs and be a revenue earner.
We still feel that we can salvage a downstream aluminum industry based on imported ingots. And that is the rationale for the Sural initiative, because in the first plan, we would have been producing our ingots for downstream work at the E-Tech Park in Tamana. We still feel there's a potential, the work is still being done for a downstream aluminum industry.
Minister Khan said Surel will be taking ownership of this project for the production of mag wheels.
One of the few prices in the world that has not been depressed is aluminum, and that is largely because of the motor car industry and aluminum wheels, which has now become ubiquitous throughout the motor car industry.
Questioned how the $35 million expenditure will be utilized, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said the majority of monies will be applied to production cost, as well as resolving a settlement with Surel for claims made in the past against the state.
There is some settlement with respect to the closure of the project, where the minority partner would have had claims against the state.
The state, yeah.
Those matters are still in negotiation. However, both partners have agreed to go forward, and some of that settlement consideration would be taken into account. So that $35 million is not directly into investment going forward. It will contribute some way to whatever comes out of the settlement of the claims.
The initial Alutech project was linked to the Alutrin smelter plant that was scrapped by the People's Partnership Administration. Alutrin was to have provided hot metal from the smelter for Alutech to make a number of downstream products, including wheel rims. Sherilyn Lewis, C News.
General Motors is cutting production and jobs at a plant near the U.S. city of Detroit. The company says big changes in the U.S. auto manufacturing industry have forced them to make the decision. Al Jazeera's John Hendren reports from Detroit.
A slowdown in Motown has General Motors cutting back. Auto sales in the U.S. have dropped nearly 10% so far this year, but at GM, the fall is nearly double that. This plant makes cars, Buicks, Cadillacs, and Chevy's Volt Hybrid, but it's SUVs that are selling now. So the Detroit Hamtramck assembly plant has gone from 2 shifts to 1. This month, it's slowing down production.
They change very quickly. They don't use the facilities and doing downtime to deal with excess inventory.
So they're quicker to react.
Yes, they are. They don't play with that no more.
On November 20th, this plant will shut down entirely until January, while demand catches up with production. When production restarts, it'll do so with 200 fewer of its 1,800 workers.
Alternative fuels may be the way of the future. Volvo is going all electric or hybrid by 2019. And America is slowly working its way in that direction, but Americans love their big cars and they have cheap gas. And as America goes, so goes Detroit.
This was once one of the busiest plants in the U.S., but automakers have moved their plants from the Detroit area across the U.S. and the world. As cars have morphed into what are effectively rolling computers, manufacturing has required fewer but more tech-savvy workers.
With the demands that they're going to have for the technical expertise, I think the manufacturing is going to be more concentrated in the U.S. Simply because that's where the talent is. I mean, you need to produce the kinds of technology that they're working on now. You have to have a very highly educated workforce.
That workforce is set to bear the brunt of the cutbacks as GM and other automakers deal with an ever-changing market that will see thousands of jobs being lost. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Detroit.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has told European Union leaders in Brussels that they don't need to worry about the UK's financial obligations to Brexit. She sought to expand talks to include trade, but other leaders wanted more progress on EU citizens' rights and the border with Northern Ireland. Al Jazeera's Jonah Hall reports from Brussels.
Theresa May knew in advance there'd be no major breakthrough. Her fellow EU leaders made clear that insufficient progress had been made to move Brexit talks beyond the current deadlocked difficulties over money and to begin talking about future trade. She instead issued what sounded like an appeal for help by a politically weakened Prime Minister who's come as far as she can and desperately needs something in return.
If we are going to take a step forward together, it must be on the basis of joint effort and endeavour. We must work together to get to an outcome that we can stand behind and that works for all our people.
What she got in return wasn't much. There were encouraging words from some EU leaders, including the all-important Angela Merkel.
We have made progress, and it is perhaps the nature of the thing that we look at it step by step. I have absolutely no doubt that if we are all focused, and the speech in Florence was a contribution, that we can get a good result.
And there was an end-of-summit commitment by the other 27 members of the EU to begin preparatory talks among themselves about what sort of future trade deal they'd like to see.
That means that at least some work will have been done on trade as the clock ticks down to Brexit, so that if the green light is given at the next Council meeting on December the 14th for talks to move on, well, they'll be just a little bit ahead of the game. It is the very smallest of concessions by the EU, where the bar for such minor victories has been set extremely low.
But in order for talks to move on, the EU wants Britain to go much further than its offer of over $20 billion to meet outstanding commitments and liabilities. That's something the Prime Minister may not have the political capital to deliver. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
Italy's wealthy northern regions of Lombardy and Veneto are going to vote on whether to take more control over their own affairs. The two regions account for about 30% of Italy's GDP. Some say they resent the amount of their taxes being used to pay for services in the poorer south, but others view it as a shrewd political move by the Northern League, which has called for independence in the past. The result of the ballots will not be binding. Al Jazeera's Hoda Abdelhamid reports from Venice.
An ancient hymn that survived throughout the centuries, reflecting a time when Venice was a prosperous sovereign state that thrived for over a millennium before becoming part of Italy. A bygone era some are hoping to revive.
The future is a Europe, one of many different people. We are not the only ones. Everyone has the right to decide its own administration. Our culture has been forgotten. Our children are not taught the history of the Republic of Venice, but a history that was never ours.
There's a strong sense of identity among Venetians, one of a region that remains an economic powerhouse, providing about 10% of Italy's GDP. But ask anyone, and they will say the region is not getting much in return, and it's time for a better financial deal. One they hope will come after taking part in a non-binding referendum that was approved by the Constitutional Court.
If you look around here, you'd be hard-pressed to know there's a referendum taking place. Now, the question voters will have to answer is not about independence, but rather whether they want more autonomy from the central government in Rome.
During the 90s, there was about...
Marco Berengo does hope the vote will help save the Murano glass industry, a cultural flagship of Venice that has decreased by nearly 90% over the past 3 decades. His family business is one of the few still surviving.
Because in a way, the politicians that will take care of the Veneto region, they come from Veneto. So they will try the best to keep the identity of Venice, the identity of the glass, going on. Still, I love to be part of Italy, and I'm Italian 100%.
But opponents see this vote as a shrewd political move by the Northern League, the regional ruling party which had called for independence in the past.
The real issues are hidden. The myth of us providing for the rest of Italy is not true. We already have other regions calling for referendums. So if each region calls for autonomy, then there will be a clash of power centers and more chaos. It will snowball. So by saying no, we try to put up a wall to stop this avalanche.
If the yes vote succeeds, it will give a popular mandate to the Northern League ahead of national elections next year. And coming on the back of the Catalan vote, the Lombardy and Veneto referendums are yet another signal of European separatist movements picking up steam again. Hoda Abdelhamid, Al Jazeera, Venice.
Stay with us. Talking Stocks comes up next. Welcome back. It's time now for Talking Stocks. 39 stocks traded today, of which 18 advanced, 12 declined, and 9 traded firm. The main JSE index advanced by 1,023 points to close at 287,104 points. The junior index also advanced by 11 points to close at 3,045. Over 3 million units traded, valued at more than $40 million on the Jamaican dollar market. And on the U.S. dollar market, over 2,000 units traded, valued at more than $540 US. Lasco distributors, with over 604,000 units changing hands, accounted for 17% of market volume. Caribbean Cement Company was second, with over 354,000 units trading. Radio Jamaica, with over 333,000 units, accounted for 9% of market volume crossing the floor. Mayberry Investments was the top advancer, up 41 cents to close at $4.60, followed by Berger Paints, up $1.06 to close at $14.88, and Caribbean Cement Company, up $1.35 to close at $28.41. The main decliners were Paramount Trading, losing 27 cents to close at $2.93, followed by Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, down 90 cents to close at $11, and Jamaica Broilers Group, down 74 cents to close at $18.21. In foreign exchange trading, the Jamaican dollar gained on all currencies today. The U.S. dollar traded at its lowest since September 2016, ending the day at $127.61. That's 17 cents less than Friday. The Canadian went down 26 cents to close at $101.44, and the British pound sold for 24 cents less today to sell for $166.91 on average. And that's the news, but before we go, a recap of our top story. Mayberry Investments Chairman Chris Berry denies a hostile takeover of Supreme Ventures. They've installed 3 of the 7 directors they were seeking on the SBL board. However, Berry says they're still consulting their attorney on whether to go ahead with an extraordinary general meeting to replace 4 other members on the board. Thanks for watching. For more content, visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Kalila Reynolds. Pleasant viewing.